Before dawn broke over the sleepy outskirts of Sheffield, England, a chilling event set a whole city on edge, a mystery that would haunt families and investigators for years. On the misty morning of October 2nd, 2013, Evelyn Reed disappeared from her modest neighborhood without a trace. A 28-year-old single mother, Evelyn lived in a small brick duplex with her 7-year-old son, Liam. With her meticulous nature and warmth, Evelyn was beloved by neighbors, who often saw her tending her tidy garden, while Liam played under the ancient oak out front. Life had never been effortless for Evelyn. Nights she worked as a cleaner at the local medical clinic, scraping by to cover the mortgage, school lunches, sometimes pawning her own keepsakes to buy Liam a new pair of shoes. But those who knew her described an unbreakable spirit, a mother devoted wholly to giving her son the childhood she never had. She often confided to her closest friend, "Safety and love, that's all I want to give Liam, more than I ever got." So, when a rare opportunity for a stable job as a receptionist at a prestigious law firm in Manchester arose, Evelyn clung to hope. Early that October morning, dressed in a freshly ironed lavender blouse, she carefully tucked her resume into her worn leather bag. She dropped Liam at the family's trusted friends, the Whitakers, a respected older couple from their church, certain she was leaving him in the safest hands possible. Evelyn promised she'd return by evening. "This interview could change everything," she whispered to Liam, hugging him tightly before stepping out into the cool, Manchester-bound dawn. But Evelyn never came home. That night, her phone was unreachable. The following morning, neighbors noticed something was wrong. The Whitaker house was oddly quiet, the usual clatter of breakfast absent. When a neighbor peered through the window, she discovered both the elderly couple and little Liam were missing. Panic seized Evelyn's family. Frantic phones calls to friends and employers led nowhere. Evelyn's sister and mother, clutching a family photograph, rushed to the Sheffield police, hearts pounding with dread. The photo they brought showed Evelyn smiling gently with Liam, taken that past summer among blooming foxgloves in Peak District Park, a simple, idyllic memory that now seemed almost cruel in its normalcy. At first, police were skeptical. Sheffield averaged hundreds of missing person reports a year, many quickly resolved. But something gnawed at Detective Adam Wallace on duty. When Evelyn's unused train ticket to Manchester was found still in her bag at home, never scanned or ripped, he knew this case was anything but routine. Within hours, a formal missing persons alert was issued. Descriptions of Evelyn and Liam echoed across radio stations, TV tickers, and bulletin boards citywide. Evelyn's family couldn't sleep. Her younger sister canvassed the neighborhood, pinning flyers to lampposts, pleading with every passerby. The family's tiny church organized search groups, splitting up to scour Endcliffe Park, local train stations, even the riverbanks under flickering streetlights. Flyers with Evelyn's gentle face and Liam's eager smile soon appeared everywhere. Cafes, bus shelters, post offices. Some neighbors reported hearing unsettling noises late the night before, a heavy diesel engine idling, followed by hurried voices outside the Whitakers' home. An elderly man across the street remembered seeing red taillights vanish into the early fog. Police reviewed old neighborhood CCTV, but in 2013, most cameras were grainy and poorly placed. The footage revealed nothing concrete. Just fleeting shadows against a damp street. Local media pounced on the unfolding drama. Soon, viewers across Yorkshire watched news reports in which Evelyn's mother, hands trembling, held up her missing daughter's photograph with tears in her eyes. In the beginning, tips flooded hotline sightings of a woman and a boy at a petrol station in Rotherham or at a ferry terminal in Hull. But every lead fizzled out. With each sleepless day, hope ebbed, but the family clung to the conviction that Evelyn and Liam were out there somewhere. As autumn leaves began to gather in thick golden drifts, the church held nightly vigils. Families gathered, hands entwined, murmuring desperate prayers that Evelyn and Liam would soon come home safe. But soon, the rumors began, whispered in market stalls and coffee shops, hinting darkly that perhaps Evelyn had simply chosen to disappear, to flee past hardships, to start again in secret. Layers of doubt settled in, threatening to bury the truth, just as the chill of November crept into the city. As hours blurred into days, the disappearance of Evelyn and young Liam descended like a frost on the Reed family and all of Sheffield. The Whitaker home soon became the focus of police activity, cordoned off behind yellow tape as officers combed every inch for clues. The once familiar smell of Mrs. Whitaker's baking was replaced by the metallic scent of worry and disbelief. Evelyn's family found themselves in a nightmare of bureaucracy and grief. Police accepted the case as a genuine abduction only after Evelyn's unused train ticket, her carefully packed lunch, and even Liam's favorite toy left behind at the Whitakers beckoned deeper scrutiny. Unlike other missing person stories, nothing fit. There was no farewell, no money withdrawn, no evidence of a plan to disappear. The community responded with a mixture of shock and unspoken suspicion. In the initial days, offers to help came in droves. Local bakeries donated bread for search teams. The church held daily gatherings with prayers and candles flickering late into the night. But as each search returned empty, whispers multiplied. Was Evelyn running from something? Could she have staged her own escape? She always seemed so anxious lately, a neighbor murmured at a corner shop, her words dissolving into rumor. Detective Adam Wallace, leading the investigation, refused to accept the easy answers. His gut insisted that the key lay somewhere in the network of people Evelyn trusted. He ordered a detailed reconstruction of the timeline, interviewing every friend, co-worker, and especially the once celebrated Whitakers. Their statements were calm, but oddly rehearsed, with Mrs. Whitaker insisting Evelyn left cheerfully, Liam promising to behave, and Mr. Whitaker claiming he read the paper by the window all evening, hearing nothing but the distant hoot of an owl. Yet, inconsistencies soon surfaced. A teenager across the street recalled seeing a large moving van idling in front of the Whitaker property long after midnight. Another neighbor, a retired postal worker, remembered the Whitakers burning something in their backyard grill the following afternoon, a thick, acrid smoke that lingered even after the autumn winds picked up. Under mounting pressure from the media and Evelyn's steadfast family, the police ramped up efforts. They brought in canine units to comb the stretch of woodland behind the Whitaker home and reached out to national databases for any trace of the missing trio. Soon, Evelyn's story turned from a mystery to a citywide obsession. Search parties grew. Social media campaigns splashed her face and Liam's across timelines. Sheffield's usually tranquil parks were suddenly filled with volunteers. Strangers stepping over brambles and rocks, calling Liam's name beneath the trees. Some offered their own theories, pointing to a handful of Evelyn's previous relationships, including one with a local man, once rumored to have a violent streak. Police interrogated him at length, only to confirm an airtight alibi. Leads began to dry up. Church members and friends found themselves caught between hope and resignation. At Sunday services, Liam's empty seat in the children's choir grew more conspicuous, his absence impossible to ignore. Through those long, silent weeks, the Reed family clung together. Evelyn's mother could hardly bring herself to touch the uneaten breakfast on the dining table, while her sister became a fixture at police headquarters, refusing to let the investigation rest. But beneath the surface, doubts began to fester in Sheffield, as they had before. Perhaps young mothers sometimes vanished on their own. Perhaps hardship and loneliness drove them to desperate choices. People wanted an end to the collective anxiety. Believing in an ordinary disappearance was easier than facing the darkness that hangs over truly unsolved crimes. By the second month, new flyers appeared less often. The media moved on to fresher scandals. Still, the Reed family returned night after night to a silent home, the quiet broken only by the fading hope that Evelyn and Liam would be found, or the ring of the phone bringing news, however dreadful, at last. The first winter without Evelyn or Liam settled harshly upon Sheffield. While most families busied themselves with Christmas preparations, the Reeds' apartment bristled with sorrow and uncertainty. Evelyn's mother would sit for hours gazing at the untouched toys on Liam's shelf, a wooden dinosaur and a faded action figure, each waiting for hands that never came. Outside, the city moved on. Headlines that once screamed for answers faded, replaced by other local crises. Search teams dissolved, replaced by ordinary walkers in the park. Most people stopped talking about the case, but for the Reed family, absence grew only sharper. Evelyn's sister, Chloe, began writing her missing sibling long letters. Stories of ordinary days and secret hopes, always ending with a carved-out ache. "Where are you, Evelyn? When will you come home?" Rumors, meanwhile, hardened into commonplace belief. At cafes and barber shops, people shook their heads. Perhaps she needed to run. Maybe there were troubles we never saw. A few alluded to Evelyn's past, a difficult ex, a period of depression, and many stopped believing anything sinister had happened at all. In the police department, Detective Wallace pushed on, haunted by details no one else could forget. The unused train ticket, the hurriedly packed lunch, the Whitakers' odd reserve. He pored over photos and statements late into the night. But with no new leads, even Wallace's superiors began urging him to move on. Officially, the Reed case was shifted to the cold case unit in 2015. For the Reeds, that designation stung like a verdict. Chloe watched police lose interest and felt the city itself betray their struggle. Liam's room remained untouched. The family's hope fossilized into ritual. Each Sunday, they prayed for a sign, unable to throw away the tiny shoes by the door. The pain of waiting wore them raw. Friends slowly drifted away, unable to face the family's unchanging anguish. Evelyn's mother shrank into herself, spending afternoons alone, clutching a fraying photograph of her daughter and grandson by the garden. 3 years after the news first broke, a new blow struck. Evelyn's father fell gravely ill. In his last days, he would grip Chloe's hand, whispering for her never to surrender the search. And after the funeral, grief left the family's flat even quieter, a dust-laden hush only broken by the sound of Chloe folding yet another letter to her vanished sister. By the time 5 years had passed, few outside the Reed family remembered the case at all. Yet, in that small home on Sheffield's edge, the ache of loss of hope turned to silence, hung as heavy as the day their world changed forever. 6 years after Evelyn and Liam vanished, the case of the Reed family was considered all but forgotten by the city of Sheffield. But in the spring of 2019, an unexpected development sent a ripple through the shadows that still lingered in their modest home. Detective Callum Fraser, freshly transferred from London, was assigned to the cold case unit. Fraser was not the sort to give up lightly. His reputation was built on patience, intuition, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. On his first night, he took home the faded file of Evelyn Reed, spreading every page across his kitchen table until sunrise painted the city in pale gold. As Fraser combed through witness reports, time-stamped phone logs, and grainy photographs, something nagged at him. The unused Manchester train ticket never scanned, never torn. In Evelyn's purse sounded an alarm bell. Why prepare carefully for a new job, find safe care for Liam, and then never leave town at all? He wrote in his notebook, "She never made it to Manchester. Last seen at Whitaker's." It was a detail earlier detectives noted, but never pushed further. In 2013, digital tracking was limited, and the assumption had always been that Evelyn left by her own choice, or by force, perhaps vanishing far away. But Fraser saw something different, a story frozen in place, not one swept away. As the young detective retraced every movement, he stumbled across something peculiar, a decade-old beauty forum post written anonymously, reading simply, "She trusted the wrong people." It had only appeared once, promptly deleted, but a screenshot had survived in the background of old police records. The phrase echoed in Fraser's mind. Trusted the wrong people. For years, suspicion had focused on Evelyn's personal struggles and the shadowy figures from her past. But what if the danger came from where she least expected it, within the very house she left her son in? He decided to re-interview everyone in Evelyn's circle. When he visited the now dilapidated Whitaker house, long abandoned after Mr. Whitaker's heart attack and Mrs. Whitaker's move to a nursing home. Fraser felt a hush come over him. Overgrown grass curled around the path. A faded tricycle lay half buried in dirt near the shed. Mrs. Whitaker, now frail and wary, gave little away. Yet Fraser's questions unsettled her. She denied knowing anything, clutching a handkerchief in her trembling hands. Still, it was enough. Her refusal to recall details of the night Evelyn disappeared, her sudden withdrawal from church and friends, and records showing the Whitakers quickly sold or disposed of certain household belongings in the weeks following, set off fresh alarm bells. Intrigued, Fraser dug into old records and found more peculiarities. An anonymous call, never followed up, had reported seeing smoke pouring from the Whitaker chimney on a warm night the week Evelyn vanished. Financial documents showed quick sales of rugs and furniture, items potentially able to conceal even the faintest traces of violence. And most telling of all, a neighbor recalled the sudden, anxious manner in which the Whitakers abandoned their home altogether, just months after the disappearance. Armed with these details, Fraser returned to his superiors. This was not a runaway case. It was a disruption, a story interrupted within the very heart of the community. He insisted on a full forensic re-examination of the Whitaker property, this time using modern tools, chemical analysis for blood traces, advanced DNA testing on surviving household items. Every member of the cold case unit, galvanized by Fraser's resolve, joined the effort. For the first time in years, hope flickered in the Reed home. Chloe and her mother clung to each update, barely daring to believe that after all the silence, the truth might finally be close at hand. In the summer of 2019, under the pale Yorkshire sun, teams in white forensic suits converged on the crumbling Whitaker house. For years, the place had seemed abandoned to the wild windows caked with grime, a brittle "for sale" sign, nearly illegible, leaning against the fence, nettles and brambles swallowing the garden path. Now its secrets would be forced into the open. Detective Fraser watched as experts methodically searched every room, peeling back faded wallpaper and scraping at floorboards. The basement, once a place for Christmas decorations and childhood hide-and-seek, was now the focus. Within a cold, shadowy nook behind a stack of splintered crates, a forensic technician paused. Sifting through an odd mound of ash and debris in the old fireplace, she let out a tense whisper. "This isn't all wood ash. There's something else." The team collected fragments, tiny, brittle, chalk-colored pieces, some with telltale porousness. Every speck was carefully bagged and labeled. In a forgotten storage closet beneath the stairs, investigators discovered a rolled-up rug, heavy and patched with mysterious dark stains. With mounting dread, they sealed these items for urgent lab analysis. The city was roused from its apathy as news spread. Police had reopened the Reed case in earnest. Television vans clustered at the end of the lane. Headlines in the Sheffield Gazette blared, New evidence found in missing mother and son case. Rumors reignited, fueling old fears and suspicions. Dozens of neighbors, once content to assume Evelyn had simply run from her life, now remembered oddities, unusual fires at the Whitakers, their abrupt reclusiveness, their hasty departure years ago. At the local church, congregants glanced at the empty pew where Mrs. Whitaker once led the hymns, whispering questions they'd never dared ask aloud. Every piece of evidence was sent to a specialized forensic lab in London. For days, Fraser hardly slept. He stared at the wall of his small office, a map covered in red pins, photos of Evelyn and Liam, and a single haunting printout. She trusted the wrong people. At last, in late August, the lab results arrived. The fragments from the Whitaker fireplace, human bone. DNA analysis left no room for doubt. The remains belonged to Evelyn Reed. Among the other items, a single strand of hair wedged into the stained rug confirmed a second, heartbreaking fact. Liam had been in that house on the day they disappeared. After 6 years of silence and suspicion, the truth finally clawed its way to the surface. Fraser delivered the news himself to Chloe and her mother. There were no words for the mix of agony and relief in their eyes. "She never left you," Fraser said gently, voice trembling. "She never left us. She was always here, and now, at last, she's found." Yet, as the city of Sheffield grappled with what it meant to mourn Evelyn and Liam anew, a darker question lingered. Who had murdered a mother and child in a home that once stood for safety? And if so many failed to see the truth here for so long, what else might still be hidden behind Sheffield's bright suburban doors? With the discovery of Evelyn and Liam's remains, investigators faced an even more pressing question. Who was responsible for their deaths, and why had they been hidden for so long inside a home once thought safe? Detective Fraser shifted focus from grieving to pursuit. Top on his list were the Whitakers themselves. But the years had scattered them. Mr. Whitaker had died 3 winters prior of a stroke in a distant seaside town, and Mrs. Whitaker Frail, largely confined to bed, now lived out her days in a small care home on the city's outskirts. Fraser dug into the couple's past, reviewing financial records, friendships, and church connections. He re-examined police statements from 2013 and, most crucially, requested permission to speak directly with Mrs. Whitaker. He met her in the facility's quiet library, its windows shadowed by rain. The once respected churchwoman looked small and fragile, white hair wispy around her lined face. Initially, she denied knowing anything, insisted that Evelyn never returned that night, that young Liam had been quiet and polite before he too was collected by a relative. But as Fraser laid out the forensic evidence bone chips in the hearth, the DNA findings, the stains in the rug, her facade began to crack. Tears welled in her tired eyes. "Arthur," she whispered, naming her late husband. "He was always so angry when worried." Bit by bit, her composure collapsed. With shaking hands, she described how, on the night Evelyn returned earlier than anyone expected, there was an argument in the lounge. Harsh words. A sudden, terrible silence after a shout. "Arthur told me it was an accident," she sobbed, voice ragged. "Said Evelyn tripped, hit her head on the coffee table, but the blood. It was everywhere, and Liam, poor boy, he saw too much. Arthur, he said we had to cover it up. If anyone knew, he warned, our lives would be ruined. He threatened me. Said I was as guilty as him if I ever told." The confession, taped with legal oversight, shattered what little was left of the couple's reputation. Mrs. Whitaker, her health failing, was placed under house arrest, pending charges of concealing both deaths and tampering with evidence. When the story broke, Sheffield reeled. Headlines declared, "Beloved church couple linked to decade-old double tragedy." Parents at Sunday service clutched their children's hands tighter. Friends who'd once sung beside Mrs. Whitaker in the choir recoiled, remembering her sudden withdrawal from public life all those years ago. People muttered, "If this could happen here, who else can we trust?" Others wept at the thought of Evelyn and Liam's last moments, betrayed in a place meant to keep them safe. Yet amidst the anger and sorrow, the truth was finally out. Evelyn's and Liam's names, once faded, now glowed in candlelight as all of Sheffield struggled to reckon with its own silence. The small, battered Reed family was at last granted the chance to mourn and to see the city, in shame and solidarity, finally say their names out loud. News of Mrs. Whitaker's confession shook Sheffield for weeks. Shock gave way to outrage, and then to soul-searching. Candlelit vigils bloomed outside the old house and across playgrounds once filled with the laughter of children. People left flowers, photos, apology notes. "We trusted you." Rest in peace, Evelyn and Liam. The trial began that autumn. In a solemn courtroom, frail Mrs. Whitaker faced charges: conspiracy, obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, and complicity in the deaths of Evelyn and Liam Reed. Though her health was fragile, the court insisted on hearing every detail. The prosecution painted a harrowing picture. Evelyn, returning for her son, caught in a fatal confrontation. Liam, silenced because he knew too much, all concealed to preserve a facade of respectability. DNA evidence, expert testimony, and Mrs. Whitaker's own shakily signed confession formed an unassailable chain. Her defense, though earnest, offered little more than a portrait of fear, a woman dominated by a violent husband, terrified and alone after decades of control. But the jury focused on her years of silence. She'd cooked in the church, smiled at neighbors, and chatted at markets, all while hiding the unforgivable truth. Justice was swift. Mrs. Whitaker, already a shadow of her former self, was sentenced to life imprisonment under special medical supervision. The judge's verdict was more than a punishment. This city failed Evelyn and Liam when it looked away. May we never again let silence be our shield. The trial's echoes reached every corner of Sheffield. Schools and churches reviewed their safeguarding protocols. The police force, facing withering criticism, launched sweeping changes. Any missing person report, especially involving women or children, was now to be acted on immediately, never dismissed or delayed. Detective Fraser, hailed as a hero by some but haunted all the same, spoke at press conferences about the price of missed details and the courage of never giving up. He urged, never assume, never forget. Every missing person matters. For the Reed family, closure was an ambiguous word. Evelyn and Liam were finally laid to rest in the city's oldest cemetery, their grave covered in flowers from strangers and friends alike. Chloe, trembling but resolute, spoke at the service. For years we shouted into silence. Let Evelyn and Liam's memory be a promise. Sheffield will look out for all its children, so no family waits alone in the dark again. As seasons passed and candles faded, the story left a lasting mark. Parents kept a closer watch, and neighbors grew less complacent. The Reed family, battered and changed, found a bittersweet peace. Justice had come, though painfully late. And so, in one city's scars, a vow took root: to watch, to listen, to act, so that behind every quiet suburban door, silence would never again spell tragedy. The tragedy of Evelyn and Liam Reed is more than a tale of loss. It is a mirror reflecting the hidden fractures in our communities. For years, their disappearance became the background noise of Sheffield, another sad headline, another cold case, quickly fading from view. Yet behind every statistic are real families, real children, yearning for someone to care enough to keep searching. This case reminds us that evil can hide behind the most familiar faces, and that trust, without vigilance, can become a door left unlocked for darkness. Respectable homes, warm church halls, friendly neighbors. None are immune to secrets. In the aftermath, Sheffield changed, not just in laws and protocols, but in countless small ways. People listen more. They speak up sooner. Not my business became, that could be my child. Justice, when it finally came, offered closure, but not relief from sorrow. For the Reed family, the memories of Evelyn and Liam will always ache, but now their suffering stands as a warning, and their names as a promise. Let us remember, behind every missing person's poster, behind the silence of a closed door, there is a story waiting for the daylight. If Evelyn and Liam taught us anything, it is this: always care. Always question. Never let silence be the reason tragedy is allowed to fester. Thank you for joining us and shedding light on their story. If their memory moves you, keep watch on your street, in your circle, in your city. Share their names. Break the silence. We hope you'll stay with us as we continue to seek truth and justice, until every silent voice is heard.